Hey guys, here we are today with our Kubota BX22. Got a tractor loader up front, mower deck in the middle, and the backhoe model BT600 here in the back. And we're working on some hydraulics in the backhoe today. So the main problem that we're working on is the boom cylinder, which is the main one here. It says Kubota on it. It's really slow and underpowered, tipping straight upwards, and we're gonna do some diagnosis and figure out if it's a cylinder or the controls for that. Some tips that I learned to do some diagnosis as to whether or not it is our control valve inside of here, one of those, which it would be, you can see the lever moving here, that would be these ones, this valve in here, could be that. Or it could be this cylinder inside of here, and this cylinder you can see is wet. I am having a feeling that cylinder might be blown out, but I do believe we have a leak inside of here, and I think we might have a cylinder and a control valve problem. To diagnose this, I'm gonna switch around the hoses for the main boom valve and the dipper, the valve hoses here. Switch these two and see if the problem stays at the boom. I believe we have a cylinder problem. Now that I have the backhoe laid out like this, I figure this is probably going to be pretty stable. Most of the pressure should be out of the lines. So what we're going to want to do now is basically take both of the sticks here and just wiggle them, make sure the backhoe doesn't move around any, move them together, and it's not. So this is stable right here where it's at. So now what we're going to be able to do is pull off those lines, and there shouldn't be any pressure, or very little pressure, nothing dangerous in them, and be able to swap them around. Those N2 can stay on because I just needed to get that far over. I had to start from this side because the two main supply lines are staggered, and that's just, I couldn't start on the other end and get everything off. Everything so far is looking okay, except for this one adapter here coming out of the block. You can see there's a little bit of rust on it. It doesn't look awful, but it shouldn't be rusty like that. There's a little bit of rust inside this fitting here as well. Let's see if we're gonna be able to see it. Probably not real clear, but yeah, so that's the only thing that was worrying. Interestingly enough too, when I pulled all of these off, a little bit of oil came out of them, which was expected. However, the one that I'm concerned about, which is this one right here, I took the top one off, and when I took the bottom one off, I heard like a sucking noise almost. Didn't hear that with any of the other ones, so I'm wondering if the valve wasn't moved, but if air was escaping through there as I was taking them off, which would mean that something's gone wrong in here for sure. Also, I used a regular wrench, 11/16, and I used a flare nut wrench. Highly, highly, highly recommend the flare nut wrench. It was almost, actually, I'm gonna say it's necessary to get these off, a combination of both of those wrenches. And then I tied them in pairs just because most of them are color coordinated, except for some reason this red one has a white one tied with it. But yeah, just put them in pairs. Now I just need to flip this function and this function, I believe. Put them all back together, test it out, see if we switch our problem around, and then we'll figure out from there what we're gonna do. Alright, so I have switched to now these yellow lines, top and bottom on that valve, with the more faded looking white ones. I'm sure these had to have been different colors at some point maybe and faded, but have them switched around. So now what we get to do is test. I put all this back together, haven't tested anything. I know some of these are routed not greatly. They're, you know, stuff's touching things I don't like and rubbing, but this is simply just, we're gonna test, start it up and see what works on the backhoe and figure out what our issues are. So this is gonna be the first test. All right, so right now, after we tested it and determined that the valve, the control valve, I believe this one right here, is leaking internally, something's going on with it. Pulled all the hoses back off. And now what we have to do is remove, you can see up here, there are those little slide pins. I forget what they're called, they're not cotter pins, but to slide those out from each of the valves, we'll have one of those on there, I believe, and pull those out so that we can just drop this whole valve body out. Those, as well as behind this cover here, there's 4 bolts that hold it on, and then this whole thing should just be able to drop right out of here, and we'll package it up and get ready to take it to a hydraulic shop. Also, all these lines, you don't want dirt getting in these or even in the ports there. So make sure, I'm gonna put a trash bag just around all of these for now. I don't have caps to put in here. Technically, you'd want to screw some caps on there, but a bag's gonna be good enough for me here. All right, as you'll see, I have the cover plate off back here, and those 4 bolts need to come out. I also have all the pins removed out of the control valve spools there. So now basically I just need to pull out those 4 bolts on the back side, keep a hand supporting this in the back here. I'd imagine it's fairly heavy, careful not to drop it, and we'll take it out and take a look at it. All right, the control valve is out. I wiped down the inside of the backhoe housing here just because it was dirty, cleaned up some of the oil down there. It's not perfect. I'm gonna wait until I get everything back in and make more of a mess before I get it perfect. I think I'm probably gonna adjust one of those in there just to make sure that I get the right range of motion that I needed out of the handles. These bolts are out. I just have them stuck down here to grab later. And just like I kind of put those in a bag to keep the dirt out, these are gonna be in this box here. This is the control valve. The goal is just to basically keep the dirt out of it before they look at it. Just don't want to make anything worse than it already is. I wiped it down a little bit, but yeah, that's just to keep it clean for them at the shop when we get that in. So we got the valve stack back from a local hydraulic shop to us here. As you can see, it looks a lot cleaner. Basically, they took everything apart. I told them about the issues that we were having, and they pulled everything apart, looked inside, saw no scoring on any of these, the spools or in the blocks themselves. So they told us their best guess was that a piece of dirt or something was somewhere inside of here. And when they pulled it apart, it washed out. They said they hooked up, they have a bench tester, they hooked up and tested the right flows and pressures through all the valves, and it functions properly. But they did reseal everything, as there were numerous leaks in between the blocks and out the tops here and all that kind of stuff. So they resealed everything for us in here. There's part number for what this thing is, and they hot dipped, I forget what the term is. All right, so this is a little bit tricky and tedious, but basically we got all of the pins back in, all of the spools and the linkages that control them. You can see the clips are all back in, all of those, and they're all connected back in. Everything works good. All the valves function, return, so that's good. That's exactly what we wanted. Now, the only difference I did was I did adjust, I believe it was the very end linkage here on the right. No, it was the second one in. As you can see by the worn away paint on inside the backhoe here, the lever was contacting with that at full or close to full pull, whereas this one here had plenty of clearance around the sides. It had a little bit of clearance, not tons. This one was always contacting, and so now, full that way, it clears. Move it full that way, it clears. Move it both, and it is close, but it clears. And same over here. Clears, clears, and close, but it clears. So that's what we're going for here. All right, so now that we have it back in place, and all the hoses are on, they're all pretty snug. It's kind of hard to get them in there. I use a flare nut wrench, highly suggest that. Maybe some crow's feet, I didn't use them, probably would have come in handy. Some stubby wrenches, I made do with one wrench, an adjustable wrench, and some other things probably shouldn't have used on here, but all the hoses are back in. So in a minute here, we're gonna fire it up and see if it leaks. I got the hose routing almost all back exactly how it was. I did move this one green hose in the back here. I moved that behind the this white hose here, and then I looked at my pictures from before, and it does appear that this inner green hose did also run outside of this white one. These two green hoses did come in a pair, so everything else is right. That doesn't bother me too much. I think it'll be fine. All right, as you can see, everything's still together. I pulled it out of the garage, did a little test on it, and everything functioned good. My valves worked out fine, didn't hit anywhere. It's proportional now. You know, you pull the valve a little bit, the backhoe moves a little bit, you pull it the whole way, it moves the whole way. Everything's perfect. Cleaned up any of the oil left on here from when they put it on their test stand at the hydraulic shop. So it's still a little bit oily and shiny from the fresh paint they put on it, but I cleaned up down here below, so basically I can use this for a little bit now and hopefully catch any leaks. If there are any leaks, I'm assuming they're going to come from my hoses up here, because that was real difficult to put those on, just the worst part of this job. So yeah, I think everything's good.